Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Katie Turner. Katie is a buyer enablement strategist helping agencies create messaging and assets that convert. She is the founder of Kate Turner Marketing, where she helps agencies build trust and transparency into their sales process through better content and positioning. Her work empowers buyers to say yes faster without traditional sales pressure. I wanted to have Katie on because too many agencies lose deals from unclear messaging, hidden pricing, and just the content that doesn't support the buyer's journey. So, in this episode, we discuss building buyer trust through transparent content, why unclear pricing kills your sales velocity, turning not now leads into future clients, and more. No one was asking for another community, but I've made one anyway. So, what's different? The dynamic agency community is designed around access rather than content. Access to peers who've done it before. Access to experts who've designed solutions, access to resources that have been battle tested. And right now, the price for founding members is only $97 a year. Join today so your agency has immediate access to everything you need to grow. You can join at dynamicagency.community. And now, Katie Turner. It's easier than ever to start an agency, but it's only getting harder to stand out and keep it alive. Join me as we explore the strategies agencies are using today to secure a better tomorrow. This is Agency Forward. What does buyer enablement mean for modern agencies?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of us don't really understand what buyer enablement means. To me, I think that it is about understanding that we are not in control of the sale. The buyer is in control of the relationship, the sale, the pace, everything that happens is in the hands of the buyer. And buying behavior has changed, people don't want to talk to salespeople. I think we all know that. It's like, when was the last time you bought something and you were excited to get onto a phone call with a salesperson? Probably not recently, right? So, people are doing their research before they ever even talk to you. They're looking at Google, they're reading blogs, they're following people on LinkedIn, they're asking ChatGPT, and they're looking for these answers. They want these answers out there. And that, I think, is becoming the sales conversation in a way. Mm-hmm. So the better that we can do as agencies to put the information out there that they want to find and make it easy and transparent and convenient for them to access it and understand it, the farther along they're going to get in that sales conversation before they ever even talk to you. So that's what I call buyer enablement. It's really, it's rooted in content, but it's content that specifically speaks to the needs of the buyer.
Right. So what are those critical components that every agency should be thinking of?
Yeah. Well, there's the foundations. It's like, what you do, who you do it for, how you do it, how it works, what your process looks like, how much it costs, when you're a good fit, when you're a not good fit, comparing yourself to competitors and being honest about when another option might be better for the buyer. All of that kind of, just helping them make decisions, anything that's going to help them make a decision. It's not about what awards you've won or, the history of your brand. Yeah. It's about them and what they need.
Yeah, that's a great point on the awards, because I literally just went through this with a client where they had tons of awards on their website. But it's like, what did those actually mean for the buyer? Because I guarantee it's not the proof point that you think it is.
Right. And I see it all the time. I've worked with fantastic agencies, and you go to their homepage and it says it's our 25th anniversary. Who cares? No, nobody cares. Right. That doesn't help your buyer choose you.
Yeah. Well, and the argument I often hear is that in this instance, right, we're more experienced. We have more reps of seeing all these things, but that only really matters if it's in an industry where that really matters, because there's a lot of newer players with better technology now, with better ideas, who knock out your experience. They're coming into this with the beginner's mindset, and they're able to kind of dethrone you. They're usurping the king.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I think that ideas don't really have like a timeline on them. If you're good at
Right.
what you do, you could have done it for a year, you could have done it for 40 years. It doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah. And so what's more important is showing examples of proof,
Right.
results,
Right.
all of the other things. How do you recommend just case studies as like a primary means for buyer enablement,
Yeah, I mean,
or are
they're
there
a
other?
good, they're definitely a good start. Like, obviously, your buyers want to see themselves in the story that you're telling. They want to see that, like, companies like them or, people like them have succeeded with whatever process it is that you're proposing. But I think there's more to it than that. I mean, I think it's really getting into the details of how is this actually going to work? Like, what does this look like?
Mhm.
How long is this going to take? How much
Right.
time do I, as the buyer, have to invest in this process? I'm already stretched thin. I don't have 7 hours a week to dedicate to this. What's it going to look like?
Mhm.
What is the transition process going to be? I mean, a lot of times people might be moving from one vendor or agency to another, and like, there's a handoff there that needs to happen, and I see that sometimes too. It's like people are asking questions like, well, we're already with this other group, and how do we move from you to them, and or whatever. And people want to feel confident that they're going to have, guidance through that process. So I think it's
Mhm.
different for every agency. But really it's about understanding what it is that your specific buyers and your specific clients stumble over or struggle with, and how you can answer those questions without them even having to ask.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So one of the terms that I can't remember who I was talking to, we got into the topic of like champion enablement.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily the buyer that we're trying to equip with everything, but rather someone we're feeding them ammo so they can go fight on our behalf.
Hmm.
How does the content that you're creating for buyer enablement, how can you set that up also so the champion can just quickly use this, right? Like, I don't know, just consume it, uh, process it, and then be able to just turn it into
Yeah,
their
I
own
mean, and
ammunition.
that is a critical piece, especially if you're dealing with sales processes that involve like big buying committees, and of course, like the
Mhm.
CFO is going to have questions that the end user doesn't, and whatever. Um, I think the key there is to just make it simple. Like, when nobody wants to get like a 40-page sales deck and then share it with somebody and say, hey, read this deck, like, give them the quick talking points that they need to know, like, hey, your CFO might ask you about X, Y, and Z. Here's what we can tell you. Boom, boom, boom. Make it really simple. Record a video, send it to them, like, just make it easy. I think, ultimately it's like, I feel like all marketing comes down to just acting like a human being. You're not
Mhm.
selling to some robot or some huge like enterprise, like as a this entity. You're selling to a person, right? So just talk to them
Right.
like they're a real person.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I guess what would you say is like the most kind of overlooked barrier to like within the buyer enablement sphere for getting deals across the finish line? Like how can you how are agencies stopping in this process and being blocked?
Yeah. I mean, I think that at the highest level, it's that a lot of times they're just not as transparent as they could be on the front end. The goal here is to really have people
Mhm.
come to the table already sort of pre-sold and already interested in what you're offering. Um, and when you're like, pricing is a great example. I talk to a lot of agencies who are hesitant to put their pricing on their webpage. They're hesitant to be upfront about that, and that is absolutely the number one, probably one of the top three factors that any business is going to, ask when they choose to work with you is, are you in my budget? So why would you block that behind a wall? Like,
Mhm.
if they can't afford you, then why would you want to waste time even having the conversation with them? Like, use the pricing as a way to filter out the people who are not qualified. Um, and be honest about it. Then at least, like, yeah, I'm having this conversation with somebody and they're already like in my price, they're already acknowledging just by having this conversation that they have the right budget. So I think that's one of the biggest things is the transparency with pricing.
Yeah. Pricing has always amazed me because if you ask most agencies what their competitors are charging, they're going to have a good idea.
Hmm.
And so it's like, so who are you hiding pricing from? If not just the buyer, right? Because your competitors probably understand what your pricing looks like as well. And so, like, if that's the reason you're not putting it on the site, like,
Right.
it's everybody already knows.
Well, and
The only person
it's
who doesn't know is your buyer.
yeah, it's interesting that competitor, that like fear of competitors, like finding out. Like I've had these
Mhm.
conversations too, where it's like, well, we don't want to put too much detail out there about what we do because like we don't want our competitors to do the same thing. And I'm like, well, your buyers need to know what
Mhm.
you do and how you do it to feel comfortable and to trust working with you. And
Mhm.
your competitors are going to figure that out, like, but that doesn't mean that they can copy it. That doesn't mean they're going to take your process, like.
Right.
And there's enough work out there for all of us, so let's just be straightforward about that too. Like I do the same thing as 65 other marketing consulting
Mhm.
agencies, and but we all do it a little differently. And maybe you want to work with me, maybe you want to work with somebody else. Like, just be honest about what your
Right.
process is. We're not hiding anything.
Yeah, that's why I like getting really clear on the problem that we're solving for. Because if we
Hmm.
can name and frame that problem, it's really hard for a competitor to take that from us
Hmm.
because everything else points back. So even if they have the same services, which really, again, I recommend people don't just lead with services on their website because that's what invites comparison. But if you lead with a solution, we have this framework that solves this problem, and you just said as a buyer, right, that this is the problem you're having within your company. So
Hmm.
here's your solution.
Well, and it's also
Um,
your point of view,
yeah,
right? Like everybody
yeah,
comes to these things with a little bit of a different perspective. My experience and my career path have led me to think about things a certain way, and you have a totally different path and a totally different perspective. And
mhm,
it's about finding the people that align with how you think about it you know
right, yeah, definitely. The Okay, how does so as you're creating some of this buyer enablement content, are you also kind of changing it or just tweaking it for the different like levels of warmth that someone's coming in? So like cold traffic versus like a referral that's already hot coming in. Like, are you giving them the same assets to help them make decisions, or are you changing those a bit based on where they're at within their buying process?
Yeah, I mean, that's getting really into like some of the more granular like pieces of it. I mean,
Mhm.
the first step I think really is like, let's create the content that's going to appeal to the broadest range of audience, right? And once you have that
Yep.
kind of toolkit and that arsenal, then yes, you should be tweaking it to the specific conversation that you're having.
Mhm.
Like, okay, this buyer is really price sensitive, or this buyer is really interested in time investment or whatever, and you're going to kind of tweak how you respond. I like to start with like just all of the fundamental stuff that I mentioned earlier, like the who, what, when, why, how much it costs, what it looks like.
Mhm.
Let's make sure that you're even clear on that, because a lot of agencies I think are not totally
Yep.
clear on how to articulate exactly what it is that they do. Then as that starts to bring in and you start to have these conversations, then it's about really like listening and extracting information. Like, what are you learning from those conversations? And then how can we
Mhm.
apply that to like the more externally facing stuff that we're creating?
Right.
So
Yeah, with kind of going back, but still following the same thread, like around your point of view and even all this content that you're creating to enable the buyer. How are you testing the messaging with that and like kind of validating that you're on the right track?
yeah. Well, I mean, you're constantly testing messaging. I mean, that's all, like it never is a static thing. Like you never like, well, we've nailed it and we're done,
Mhm.
Like it's all
The dream. Yeah.
right. If that were the case, then you and I would not have jobs, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you do test it. I think that what I like to do personally is like I like to first off see how people are responding. Like, is this engaging? I mean, it's simple as stuff like, does this LinkedIn post resonate? Is it starting conversations with people who are qualified to buy from you? Are
Mhm.
people engaging with this like Substack post or whatever it is that you're putting out there? Like, what does the actual engagement look like? But then it's also about listening to the conversations that happen. I like to listen to call recordings or get direct feedback even from customers. Like, customer surveys I think are important, and it's a little bit more of like a much once you've got some of the fundamentals working and they're in place for a while, then you can start to do like surveys or other kinds of research like customer interviews and stuff. And I always like to ask questions like, how would you describe us to somebody else? Like, what do you think that we do?
Mhm.
What problem did you come to us for? And like, how did it meet your expectations? There's a lot you can uncover from just that will give you a really good sense of whether or not your message is, translating correctly, whether it's hitting the points you want to hit. But it's a constant evolution. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a never changing thing.
Yeah, we actually had uh, so testing your messaging with your audience is obviously great, but we had someone in the dynamic agency community test language amongst essentially competitors. Right, I'm using air quotes for anyone listening. Just around like, hey, what do you think we do, and then what do you think we're priced at? And everyone kind of nailed down what they do, but everyone thought they were priced way higher than they actually are, and that led to them actually putting their pricing on their website. And I was talking with the founder of that company recently, and they had like a more than 10% increase in bookings just by putting their pricing on that page.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I think a lot of people miss that. Hey, even your friendly competition can also be a good tool, right?
Yeah.
For
Oh, I mean,
validating you.
I have conversations all the time with other like marketing people and other agency people
Mhm.
about what it is that I do and what it is that they do. And like, in fact, I had a conversation yesterday with somebody who was in the dynamic agency community about this exact thing. And I'm
Nice.
like, you know, what is the biggest problem that you face? Like, you're my target audience. I'm not trying to sell you my services right now, but like, you are my target audience. What is the biggest problem that you're facing? Because I want to be able to talk about the solution that I offer framed in a way that resonates with the problem that you have, you know?
Mhm.
And that is extremely valuable. I mean, it led to a lot of like insight for me. Just having those kinds of conversations periodically, I think is hugely helpful.
Yeah. Um, let's shift gears. Like, so let's say a customer does come to you and right, they need the help with buyer enablement and everything, nailing down their messaging on this front. What process are you taking them through in order to
Yeah.
get that result?
Yeah. So the first step is always about like, let's uncover what your differentiation is. Let's articulate your message clearly. Let's make sure that you are, you're that we understand how you want to be positioned in the market and that all of the things that you're doing around that are supporting that positioning. So we got to nail the messaging. I mean, that's the first step, right?
Mhm.
And then from there, we go into really looking at what their buyer journey looks like. What are they doing right now? How are you kind of attracting prospects from the top of the funnel all the way through, each kind of touch point? And what are you saying? And like, where do people tend to drop off? Like, do you have two calls with them and then they ghost? And you never hear from them again, like, or
Mhm.
is it something else, like they work with you for 2 months and then they're not getting what they need out of it? Like, what's wrong? Like, what's happening? That's kind of the problem. And from there, I'm usually able to sort of identify some different types of like touch points or content assets that we can use to support the movement through that
Mhm.
process. I know you mentioned books a little bit earlier, but like I'm going to bring up this book Nudge, because I think that this
Yeah.
inspired a lot of like the way that I think about this stuff. And this is rooted in, it was like behavioral health. Like, people were talking about like
Yeah.
quitting. I forget the exact example because it's been a few years since I read it, but like they were talking about like campaigns where people have like quitting smoking or like talking to a
Hmm.
doctor about something like that. And like, you want to always give people, you never want to give a person a binary choice, right? You never want them to be able to say like yes or no. Like, it's like, you can do this or this or this. And all of these are good options that are going to move you slightly forward in our process. One
Hmm.
of them might be a little step, one of them might be a big step, and one of them might be a huge step, right? So it could be something like, you're ready to like move forward and sign a contract right now. Great.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not quite there yet. Why don't you like follow our newsletter and get our content? Oh, not quite there
Yeah.
yet. Okay. Why don't you like just follow us on LinkedIn and maybe, subscribe to our Substack or something like that. Like, always give them a choice that is positive forward movement, that doesn't really give them the option to like walk away, right? They still could
Right.
walk away. Obviously, we all know that. But like, you're not going to give them that as a choice. It's never going to be a yes, no. And I think a lot of times we just make that mistake. Like, it's like, hey, like, we talked about working together. I'm going to give you a proposal. And then it's either yes or no. Okay. And then if it's no, then they just sort of fall off the wagon,
Right. You're gone. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
No is not always no. No is sometimes just not yet or not now or not the
Right.
right
Not that.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. In the army, we have the military decision making process. It's a very lengthy course if you like to learn about this stuff. But one of the phases of this is called COA Dev, so course of action development, and you're trying to present usually it's at least three options to whoever the commander is that are all feasible. Like, well, there's multiple criteria: feasible, suitable, like all these things. But it's like we come in with like our preconceived, like we want you to choose this option because we know like if the commander chooses this, it lets us go and do all these things. But we still got to present three that all make sense. And depending on where the commander's at now, they get to choose for these. And it's like the perfect kind of setup for what you're saying with the buyer. Like, that buyer may have some other idea in their head right now for what's going on. There's some variable that we're not aware of. And
Hmm.
so even though we're presenting three things, they might not choose the one we're expecting, but by giving them something else, at least they're still choosing something that we've put down as a good, like a suitable option for moving forward with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Or even
it's
just
really
to them to choose to continue to stay engaged with you in some way. Like, they might not be
right.
ready for, working together or for getting a proposal or for even really continuing on to like a deeper conversation, but they still want to follow you. They still want your emails. They still want your
Hmm.
communications. And all of those things are eventually going to nurture them towards, okay, I do have this problem. And now the stars have aligned and it's time to fix this,
Right.
and you're the first choice. And I think
Hmm.
the other thing too, like, kind of just going back to what we said earlier about like being afraid of competition and barriers and stuff like that. I think the role of the agency really needs to be as a trusted advisor, right? Like,
Hmm.
and in embracing that idea, and also in embracing the idea that like you are here to serve the needs of your buyer, not yourself. You have to accept that they are going to potentially choose somebody else, right? Like, they might come to the conclusion that you're not the right solution for them. And that's okay. Like, you have to be okay with that because you still established yourself as like a sounding board, an advisor, and when that person who walks away and says, you know what, it's not a right fit for me, but I feel really good about this. And like 3 months later, I'm going to come across somebody who has the problem that you solve, and I'm going to
Yeah.
refer them back to you and say something like, I didn't work with this person, but I had a really awesome conversation and she really knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And then that's your client, like
Right.
I think it's about getting away from this kind of like mindset that like we have to capture these buyers. Even the language we use around marketing and selling sometimes is so adversarial. It's like it's like we're gonna
Yeah.
like capture these leads. We're gonna I don't know. No.
Right. Yeah. I had thought of something else around the book Nudge. Like one of the examples in the book that I really enjoyed. Maybe it's because I had two kids who were just starting at the time I read it to go to school and have lunch. We're just like shifting the lunch options from the way they were presented, changed the children's behavior
Mhm.
for what they were actually choosing to put on their plates.
Yes.
And I think that's another great concept, even within buyer enablement. It's like, what if I just present the right facts at the right time in front of you in order to kind of guide your decision?
Mhm.
And it's like, so if we just think, what do I need to put in front of someone in order for them to realize they have this problem, or like maybe these symptoms are more prevalent for them, so let me put these assets and it'll actually shift them into the right form of thinking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, and
yeah.
it's about framing the problem and framing the solution in the language that they use.
Mhm.
Like I always say, like, you know, at its core, like buyer enablement is not about attracting more leads, right? Like it's not a
Right.
lead generation strategy. But almost every agency that I talk to, and I'm sure you hear it too, the first thing they will say is, we just need more leads, you know? So
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
so it's like you have to frame the solution through the lens of the problem that they're experiencing,
Mhm.
and yeah, buyer enablement itself is not a lead generation strategy, but when you take the time to get a deeper understanding of how your buyers think and what they need and what they want, then you're going to get more of the right buyers to listen and perk up their
Mhm.
ears, and then they're going to like raise their hand and make themselves known to you. There are the leads are out there. I get
Yeah.
65 emails a week of people offering to send me 1,000 leads a day or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that
Yeah.
leads are the problem. The problem is that you're not getting enough like qualified conversations. You're not getting
Mhm.
these people who are sort of already in your orbit to move towards wanting to have a conversation. You're not getting them ready for that conversation.
Right.
Yes, will you get more leads? Uh, yes, but you're going to get
Yeah.
more people who are like, yeah, hey, I'm over here and I have that.
Right. When you look at, so sometimes it's just changing the conversation, right? Where I think 100% agree. Almost every agency I talk to, leads is the issue, but most of them are still getting some leads. And
Mhm.
so it's like, what if you just had a higher close rate? And we look at like the sales velocity formula.
Yeah.
It's like, if I can just double your close rate, that's to have the same effect as doubling your number of leads. So like, there's other ways we can tackle this problem, and in order to get you the same result. And like buyer enablement is one of those ways that we
Hmm.
can, do more with the leads that you currently have.
Yeah.
Um, so let's do a 80-20 exercise. What are the few actions that you think an agency should take like right now to have the most impact on their kind of buying process?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that getting your message crystal clear, like that's that,
Mhm.
and really understanding like how to very succinctly and clearly articulate, this is who we're for. This is what we do. This is what our process looks like. And this is how much it costs. That's like getting that squared away. But then I think the other piece of it is, you know, like talk to your buyers, talk to your buyers, ask them, like, what are the problems that you're experiencing? Like, do more listening than talking and echo the language that they use back to them. That's
Mhm.
probably the easiest way to build trust, to, move people through your process, like, is to just hear what they say and say it back to them, and reframe that conversation around what they need, and stop thinking about what
Mhm.
you need and really think about it from what they need.
Awesome. So I got two more questions for you as we wrap up.
Yeah.
First one being, what book do you recommend everyone should read?
That would be this book,
Hey,
Nudge.
there we go.
I read it a few years ago. I was actually working in healthcare at the time, and it made a lot of sense then. But like, it's the idea that it's a nudge, right? Like every part of your
Mhm.
every part of your process where you're engaging with a prospect or a potential buyer or even a customer should be nudging them towards the next best choice for them. Okay. What
Mhm.
is the next best choice for them. And every choice that you give them should be a good choice for them to make, like something that's going to continue to move them forward towards solving their problem, of course, aligned with the way that you want to solve their problem for them. But like they make a choice, right? Like they can choose to engage with you. They can choose to follow your content. They can choose to learn more from whatever. Like all of these choices need to be positive choices that they can make to continue to move forward. And it's not like a battle card or a, capture
Mhm.
system or a funnel that you're like shoving them through. It's a nudge. It's just a little push in the right direction. And that's what I think buyer enablement
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah. I love the idea just because it's like I can go tell someone exactly what they need, but they're immediately like, because I'm incentivized to sell my
Hmm.
solution, right? They're on edge
Yeah,
immediately until we built up enough trust but if I could just nudge them towards that solution and just give them little things
right.
like through like giving them what they need, it's like we kind of skip through some of that I don't even know what the right word is, right? Like just them not trusting us initially.
Yeah.
We're just showing them that we're helpful in the
Nobody wants to
process.
be sold. Everybody wants to buy.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to be sold. And
Yep.
they want them to think that it's their idea, you know?
Right.
And when you're just like giving them the right kind of information and empowering them to make the decision on their own, which involves you being incredibly transparent about what you do and don't do, who you do it for and who you do and don't do it for, and what it costs and like all of the things that they need to know. You're giving them that
Mhm.
information. They have all the tools that they need to make a decision and they feel like it's their choice. And that is going to
Yeah.
be such a better relationship that you're going to have with that client. They're going to come in, they're going to come to the conversation already sort of pre-convinced. The trust is built. They're ready to buy. And, the relationship is just going to go so much more smoothly, that you're going to retain them for longer. Like there are all these wonderful things that are going to come out of that. But it is
Yeah.
about empowering them to make their own decisions.
Cheers. Last question. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Katie Turner, Kate Turner Marketing. My website is kateturnermarketing.com. My email is katie@kateturnermarketing.com. It's pretty simple. Kate Turner Marketing. Just Google that. You'll probably find me.
Awesome. All right. Well, Katie, thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's the show, everyone. You can leave a rating and review, or you can do something that benefits you. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to Agency Forward on Substack. You'll get weekly content, resources, and links from around the internet to help you drive your agency forward.